どうも、獅子王Genhakuと申します。Today, in this recording, we're gonna talk about glove puppetry. Glove puppetry is let's say it's kind of like a traditional performance act that has transcended in 20th and 21st century. It has become somewhat big in Asia, not so much in the West, but it's getting there with the introduction of Thunderbolt Fantasy by Gen Urobuchi, as it blends the line between traditional performance arts and anime, as also because they added a lot of CG in it. So, on Friday nights, I'm gonna go watch this glove puppetry movie, a theatrical act called Demigod, or in Mandarin, it's named after P. Lee's main titular protagonist called Huan-Jen. And here's a picture of him. You may have seen him if you've been in Taiwan's airport, but this is his updated model that P. Lee uses for his prequel movie. But before the exposure of Thunderbolt Fantasy, a collaboration between P. Lee glove puppetry and Gen Urobuchi and Nitro Plus, this form of traditional performance arts is only limited to a local dialect known as Hokkien. They speak in this dialect while performing, and as you can tell, Thunderbolt Fantasy is dubbed in Japanese to make it sound more anime, as well as the updated designs for a more anime style attire than a traditional wuxia context that the minds of the Huang brothers of P. Lee have thought. But P. Lee didn't really start with the two talented brothers. It all started back when ethnic Han settlers brought their tradition from coastal China, mainly Fujian province, to the island, and they originally performed just like any other opera troupes or drama troupes have done in the past. They go to temples and have a tour around a region, and they have puppets retelling and portraying traditional stories like the Romance of Three Kingdoms, Water Margin, or other local folk tales that they thought of and perform. As seen with this very traditional model or traditional puppet depicting the tiger Wu Song fought and the god of war and the god of money, Guan Yu. Also, the Buddhist Bodhisattva later venerated. Here's the two model that I just mentioned. It was so prominent in the island that the governments have attempted to use this form to spread propaganda and ideologies. For example, in the 1930s and 40s, the Japanese colonial government permitted the performance of such traditional act, but the performers have to portray Japanese stories instead of the traditional Han Chinese based ones. Furthermore, the puppets have to be Japan themed to spread patriotism. So instead of portraying Guan Yu and his feats from Romance and the Three Kingdoms, you get samurai stories and patriotic argument. When the Japanese left after the Second World War, the nationalist government also brought their propaganda with them. This time, permitting the traditional act to be done in Mandarin, and have puppets spreading anti-communist propaganda, such as the President Chen, the younger President Chen, being a good guy, Russians and mainland Chinese people under Mao Zedong, aka the commies, being the wretched enemies of the free people and the threat towards democracy, as well as the Democratic Big Daddy, the U.S. President, Jimmy Carter. Absurd, but all true. Here are the puppets that they have portrayed. However, just like the Japanese propaganda, it flopped. But unlike the Japanese propaganda, it's not popular. It's not as influential, because the Japanese propaganda puppets bring in new design and new archetypes. But the nationalist anti-communist propaganda, it didn't add things into the act. It tore down, and people start to not watch the traditional act because it became more boring. While the government propaganda didn't spark enthusiasm, the Huan twin brothers' father was able to commercialize and give the glove puppetry a proper TV debut with a very big hit TV program called 大儒侠实验文 云州大儒侠. Also, in English, it would be called a Confucian wuxia at Yunnan, because why not? I guess that's how that's how the creative process worked. We need an original, somewhat original story, or a somewhat more advanced retelling of a wuxia's folktale, and enacted it on television. The original series was such a big hit, and it's conducted in Hokkien, to the point that students and workers would skip school and ditch their work just to get to the television and watch the show. And it has been a problem according to the government's eyes. So first they forced the TV series to add this character, a patriotic character whose attire resembles the flag. It didn't work out because while other characters are speaking Hokkien, this character's theme song is in Mandarin, while the character speaks in very broken and simple Mandarin phrases. The government later thought this is a bad thing. It doesn't really work, so they banned the show altogether. And years later, when the ban was lifted, the traditional audience have all grown up or moved on and caused a decline. The reboot of the series wasn't really a big hit anymore. However, that's where the Pili brothers came in and have this brand new idea with a rather more original story where you have Huan-Jen, a demigod who's not only a Confucian scholar, but also has divine powers, journey through the world. I first encountered glove puppetry when I watched Pili's show, but this was their kind of like a Crisis of Infinite Earths type of situation of the midpoint reboots era, where like there's Armageddon, the most badass antagonist from the Pili universe, who also managed to cameo in Thunderbolt Fantasy's very first theater special. His name was in Mandarin 气天地, and he's just a fallen celestial being who is hell-bent in destroying the earth, as if atonement for the mortal kind in the material realm is no longer possible. And he's also being ridiculed by fans as the guy who kills off prominent characters, because in his 13th episode, or should I say 15th episode of Terror, he basically kills at least one character in each episode. And they're not just no-namer soldier grunts. They are previously established characters. And if you think Urobuchi Gen has a twisted mind and wicked plot twist, think again, because Pili outplayed Urobuchi Gen to the point that Urobuchi Gen became a fanboy, and eventually Urobuchi Gen proposed to Pili. I can't outsmart you. How about I join you and let's make a series together to bamboozle the fans? And Pili was like, oh, hell yes. We're trying to expand our audiences to the overseas, and Japan and the anime community seems to be the best choice. So they did it. They have the updated model design, the anime-esque, and Thunderbolt Fantasy is born. There's 2 movies and 3 seasons for now. And they seem to... They're hell-bent to make it a long-term series. At the end of season 3, which is no longer in Tori, because they went back to the vagabond's homeland for most of the season. It's quite mind-blowing, and it serves as a very good entry point for the Pili series, as they also have like cameos of Huan-Jen, the movie that I'm gonna watch, and the aforementioned hell-bent fallen celestial figure cameoing. So, to wrap it up, it's kind of like a wuxia anime cinematic universe kind of thing of Taiwan. And I recommend you all to watch Thunderbolt Fantasy before you try and get into the complicated rabbit hole of glove puppetry. that's all for today. I'll see you next time, and I'll show you, before I end this video, I'll show you an excerpt of the entry monologue of the titular character Huan-Jen, because prominent characters during their entry, their first iconic entry, often has a somewhat poetic soliloquy conversed in Hokkien, and you can it's kind of like the awkward point where when you watch Thunderbolt Fantasy, you suddenly hear a different language, while there's a different voice actor delivering the soliloquy lines in Hokkien when the character speaks and is dubbed in Japanese. So, without further ado, Shishio and Genhaku off, and here is the soliloquy. Enjoy.
本心本性亦本心，ความรู้ส่วนตัว是ส่วน心，脑中心是充满关，将我父母半边天，用你随智慧，抢进来，我向魂，天命真教，用金龙。